Well, good morning. I know we're going to have other mayors slip in as we go, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Steve Benjamin. I'm the mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, and president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I want to welcome each and every one of you to the conference's 87th winter meeting. Before we get started, I'm going to ask mayors to do a quick roll call. Starting, Lily? Why don't you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Mayor Lily May from the city of Fremont, California.
Good morning. I'm Mark Mitchell, Mayor of Tempe, Arizona.
Madeline O'Hara, Mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee. Sharon Weston Broom, Mayor of Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Elizabeth Couts, Mayor of Burnsville, Minnesota.
Smiling Paul Soglin, Madison, Wisconsin.
If you only knew.
Rich David, Binghamton, New York.
John Giles, Mayor of Mesa, Arizona.
Good morning. Shane Bemis, Gresham, Oregon.
Muriel Bowser, Washington, D.C.
Mayor Brian Waller, Piscataway, New Jersey.
Brian Barnett, Rochester Hills, Michigan.
Greg Fisher, Louisville, Kentucky.
Oliver Gilbert, Miami Gardens, Florida.
Keisha Lance Bottoms, Atlanta, Georgia.
Alan Eckberg, Tukwila, Washington.
Standing tall in the back, Denny Doyle from Beaverton, Oregon.
David Holt, Oklahoma City.
Steve Adler, Austin, Texas.
Awesome. The mayors who stand before you are Republicans, Democrats, and independents. They come from cities both large and small, urban, rural, and suburban. But these labels do not define us. In fact, what you see before us is one united group, a group that governs in real time, does not get distracted even by major disagreements, and who collectively work together to improve the lives of all of our residents. The nation's mayors are here in Washington, D.C. to do what we do best. We solve problems and deliver results. Indeed, a record turnout for our winter meetings. We're here to show Washington how it's done and push them to address the critical needs of our cities and the very real problems that Americans across this great country face every single day. While Washington remains mired in gridlock, the nation's cities are continuing to move forward. Mayors are mobilizing resources, working to create opportunities for all of our citizens, and launching innovative ideas to take us into the 21st century. Lest anyone forget, our nation's cities and metropolitan areas are the bedrock of the United States economy, accounting for nearly 96% of all U.S. job gains, 91% of our gross domestic product, and 92% of all wage income. U.S. metros are home to over 99% of the growth in economic input over the past year. So it's in everyone's best interest to keep these economic engines strong. That means investing not only in infrastructure that repairs our roads, bridges, and water systems, but also that builds cutting-edge information, transportation, and green infrastructure for the future. I'm very proud of the work that our conference's Infrastructure Task Force has done on the leadership of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti and its Vice Chair, LaToya Cantrell, the Mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana. We developed a 5-point infrastructure priority plan for the 116th Congress that includes investments in state and local transportation block grants, unleashing the $9 billion in the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, repairing our cities, our crumbling water systems, building new information pathways, funding programs that address the incredible need surrounding climate change, and investing in places that have been left behind for far too long. I will note that Mayor Garcetti was scheduled to be with us here today, but needed to stay back in Los Angeles to help bring an end yesterday to the Los Angeles teachers' strike. Another example of a mayor getting the job done, helping opposing sides find common ground and working for the collective good of the community. Let us be clear, no one wins when there's a federal government shutdown. Every day, mayors across this country put aside our partisan differences and find common ground on even the most difficult of issues. We do not have the luxury of turning our back on our residents. It's time for Washington to take a page out of our playbook. We need to move beyond the current political impasse. The longer the country remains hostage to it, the more we miss opportunities to right what is wrong and to strengthen what is weak. We stand ready to work with our federal partners. We're thankful to the Speaker and our other congressional leaders who will be joining us here today. We're thankful to the administration for sending over top brass this week to engage with America's mayors. We stand ready to work with all of our federal partners on a path that's not only pragmatic and principled, but also bipartisan allows us to come together for a much brighter, more inclusive future for all Americans. Now I'd like to ask Brian Barnett, my friend, the Vice President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Mayor of Rochester Hills, Michigan, to come forward and make a few remarks. Brian.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank Mayor Benjamin for his leadership and Mayor Fisher for his leadership as well, Tom Cochran, our CEO, and his entire team for putting this week together. We're off to a fast start. It's early on our first day, but we are already off and running. And like Mayor Benjamin said, I'm very much looking forward to the next 3 days discussing the issues that he outlined and that matter most to America's mayors. Now, ironically, these are the same issues that matter most to the residents of our country, issues that center around the conference's bipartisan platform of infrastructure, innovation, and inclusion. Now, we all know that this meeting is taking place in Washington against the backdrop of an unfortunate government shutdown. And I won't belabor the shutdown discussion, but we'll say this. You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. Abraham Lincoln said that, and he of all people understood the challenges of divided government and a restless nation. I can assure you this morning that the conference's entire meeting is focused on the responsibilities of tomorrow. Republicans, Democrats, and independents talking about creative ideas and solutions, engaging in civil conversation, building new relationships and partnerships, and then taking action that benefit all of our residents tomorrow's. Instead of getting mired in frustration and dysfunction, America's mayors are working collaboratively at home to find solutions to complex issues facing their cities every day. We've learned that if we actually take the time to listen, we have much more in common than not. And we all want the same great outcomes for our residents and for this country. Looking forward to working with the women and the men beside me over the next 3 days, and would underscore the fact that we're not escaping the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today, and we would invite Washington to follow our lead. Thank you.
Now we have our conference's second vice president, who's actually two places at one time right now. He's chairing a meeting a room over, and he's here with us here today. And I invite the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, Greg Fisher, up.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate you all. And as we ponder our themes this year of infrastructure, innovation, and inclusion, so much of that comes together in the Metro Economies report, specifically as it relates to how our economy is doing. The brief on that is the overall economy is doing okay. Now, we are being impacted, obviously, by the volatility here, by our trade disputes that we're having with adversaries, with allies. The Brexit is throwing this into question as well as the slowing economy in China. So when we hear the reports as mayors that the overall economy is good, the emphasis is overall, because we know that there's many people in our cities that are still suffering from lack of economic mobility. If you're in the top 20% of the income earners and wealth earners in our country, you're doing quite well, probably never better than before. But folks in the middle class are struggling just to stay even, and our low-income residents are falling further and further behind. And this is really the issue of the day for us as Americans, to make sure that everybody feels like they have some hope if they play by the rules and work hard. And that's been in question in our country for too long right now. We don't have in our cities the ability just to look the other way. We have to deal with the reality that each and every one of our citizens needs to feel connected to a bright and hopeful future. Part of that, we hope, is a new tool available to us in the realm of opportunity zones. So opportunity zones are giving people with deferred tax gain strategies, a way to invest in our cities in our low-income census tracts. What mayors are working on is to make sure that any of those investments that take place are actually going to be benefiting our residents, specifically our low-income residents, where they can increase both their income and their wealth. What we're not interested in Louisville, I can tell you, is for more vulture investors to come into low-income areas, cash out, and not leave any money or any wealth behind. So we're working through all those strategies right now, as we're still very, very early in the days of opportunity zones. So thank you, and again, I'd like to thank our conference president, Steve Benjamin, for his leadership this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Now we're going to hear from Mayor Elizabeth Kautz, past president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the mayor of Burnsville, Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we're all here to work together to really accomplish the three pillars that our President and Vice President have put forward: infrastructure, innovation, and inclusion. What I want to focus on is the inclusion piece, because when you look at that pillar, it really addresses innovation and also infrastructure. When we bring our people together to look at solving these problems in our cities and across the nation, we're looking at how we solve infrastructure issues. When we bring our people together, we're looking at how we innovate, because we also have to work with school board members and our higher learning institutions to look at what innovations are going to come out of there, to look to the future, as Vice President Barnett has spoken about. In Burnsville, we're working with our school district in the high school so that our students are in classes that help them on a pathway forward to their careers. And looking at innovation, working with our companies within the city of Burnsville to help mentor those students. All of these things that have to do with inclusion really has to accomplish those pillars that we're talking about. In Burnsville, we're looking at how we solve the issues of infrastructure, not only above the ground but below the ground, how we stretch and manage those resources out 25 years. So one of the things that is very important to us is partnerships. Our president talks about how we bring everybody together to the table, and it's partnerships with our corporations and how we solve all of these problems: infrastructure, innovation, and inclusion. And we need the federal government to be a partner in all of that, and we need an infrastructure transportation bill to be passed. And that is what's important to all of us. Mr. President, thank you for your leadership, and we'll continue to work together to make sure that we deliver for our people and our nation what needs to be done.
Amen. Thank you, Mayor Couts, Mayor Cantrell, Mayor Davis. Would you introduce yourselves real quick? We did the roll call earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor Hardy Davis, Augusta, Georgia, the nation's cybersecurity capital.
Latoya Cantrell, City of New Orleans.
All right. And obviously, all of you know Tom Cochran, our Executive Director and CEO. I want to thank Tom and the entire staff here. This is an action-packed agenda, comprehensive and thoughtful, focused on the 3 I's, but also focused on the fact that we can only move forward if we move forward together as a great country. Be happy to field some questions from the press right now. Sir?
For Mayor Bowser, can you talk to us? Yesterday you announced $2 million to keep SNAP available through at least the end of February into March. The administration is preparing to provide some relief for feds as far as their mortgages now, I understand. Can you tell us about that?
Well, sure. Thank you, Mark. And I want to thank Mayor Benjamin and all the mayors who are gathered here, who gather in Washington each January for our winter meeting. You heard the president's charge to all of us to focus on the 3 I's. And as all the mayors here are focused on every single day, is the day-to-day operations of our cities. We are unfortunately in an unprecedented time right now, the longest federal government shutdown in recent history, or I believe ever, and we are all struggling to make sure that the quality of lives of our residents aren't disrupted. We, perhaps more than anybody, are kind of in the belly of the beast of this shutdown. We have more than 70,000 D.C. residents who are affected by this furlough, and we are really trying to make sure, as mayors do, that we are doing everything locally to help our cities continue to run and to run effectively and step in the place of the federal government. So today, Mark, what we're introducing is a temporary loan program for people who may not be able to make their mortgage payments this month. We know that some of those 70,000 people have missed one check and will miss another one this week, and will will begin to experience very significant financial difficulties at their homes. So this is a $9 million program. It will be administered by the D.C. Housing Finance Agency, and we are happy to provide details of that program. You mentioned SNAP. I'm pleased to chair the conference's Food Policy Council. And in recent years, we have focused on ways to get more food in underserved communities. And this day, we will talk about what could happen, and what many of us are experiencing, distributing our SNAP benefits early, what happens if they run out, and what we are going to do with our communities. We know we have very many food insecure people in American cities, and we're working on solutions to cover them in this shutdown, but cover them in every day of the year that they are experiencing food insecurity.
All right. Thank you. Please.
This is for Mayor Cantrell. Can you talk about ongoing efforts to work with lawmakers and the administration about advancing a federal infrastructure package, and then as a city leader, what you would like to see out of that package?
And Mayor, why don't you come to the microphone so that everyone can catch your voice as well.
Thank you. You asked about infrastructure packages with the federal government. Well, one thing in the city of New Orleans, wanting to ensure that the federal dollars that have been allocated to the city of New Orleans are actually hitting the ground. That has been a unique challenge for us, but it does set the tone that cities, and as we have done and polled all of our communities throughout the United States of America, infrastructure is its top priority. And it's not just roads and bridges, it's also streets and drainage and transportation options for our people. So we definitely need the federal government to get back to work, because every day that they're not at work is a day that our people go without. And this is a priority that I stand committed with my fellow mayors right here this morning.
It's important to note that almost 80% of American infrastructure is funded by state and local governments. In water and sewer infrastructure, 98.5%, again, produced by local and state governments. Only 1.5% of that coming from the federal government in the form of WIFIA. And it's also important to note that as we talk about federal aid and federal support, that federal money is actually our money. This is the money that our citizens send to Washington, D.C. every April 15th, and we're talking about repatriating those dollars back into communities where they can work. So I want to make that clear. Please.
Yeah, Peter Summer, Capital Intel. You said before that 90% of the growth engine is from urban America, and I know all the biggest funds from Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Carlyle, KKR are looking to invest in infrastructure. My question is, we have Trump proposing $1.5 trillion. We have gridlock in Congress, but this is something fundamental for you. How are you going to push the Congress to put these bills, your wish list like P3s, airport privatizations, utilities? These are all serious stuff, and we have investment. And the second part of the question is, this is combined with this unique and unprecedented opportunity with opportunity zones. How are you going to make sure that the good best practices are made, the good players are allowed to get opportunity zones, and the bad players, slumlords and stuff, are excluded from this, maybe IRS or something else, and also your wish list on any of these private...
You said the second part. That was about 10 questions. Yeah. But I'll do my best to answer all of them as I think they were articulated, and certainly any of my colleagues feel free to jump in at any moment. The primary tool used to finance infrastructure in this country is the tax-exempt municipal bond. It's the tool that's been used literally since before the advent of the Internal Revenue Code in 1913. It was codified in the code, and we've used it effectively over the last century to deliver infrastructure. Even in spite of that, we still face probably a $4 trillion deficit across this country in meeting critical infrastructure needs. We try our best not to use the word infrastructure because it's not a humanizing word, but the characteristics that define us as a developed nation, clean water, the ability to deal with sewage, bridges and roads and hospitals and school systems. We're talking about a $4 trillion deficit that the American Society of Civil Engineers says we have to address. So I say that to say that our primary goal is always to protect the tax exemption of muni bonds. It allows every city and community of every size to access the capital markets. But many of us are engaged in and open to aggressive P3s that help us meet our community needs as well. It's we've seen some successful models. We do believe that Opportunity Zones presents us with some significant opportunities, and that's why we've been engaged from the very beginning. I believe at this conference last year, we had two of the original sponsors of the Investing Opportunity Act, Senators Booker and Senator Scott, join us just a month after the tax bill passed, and we've expressed our support and thanks to Representatives T-Berry and Kine, good bipartisan legislation that slipped into the tax bill. And we've been on the front lines, working with our governors and establishing the zones and a face-to-face meeting with Secretary Mnuchin and his staff, and of course he'll be joining us here at the meeting as well. Continue to make sure that Opportunity Zones do in fact meet the needs of the people who live in the census tracts designated, that we are indeed trying to have some type of long-term effect on the quality of life of folks in those areas. Everyone from the sovereign wealth funds that you mentioned to pension funds in our country and abroad are interested in infrastructure investments. We're always open to that discussion. I think it's going to take a great deal more creativity in helping meet our infrastructure needs, but as long as that creativity and that procurement lives within the values of our cities and actually meeting the needs of our cities in a way that is as fiscally responsible as we all have to run our cities. I have a balanced budget. We've had to have a balanced budget. It's required by law. We finished 6 of the last 8 years with a budget surplus in Columbia, South Carolina. We haven't had a tax increase in a decade. We've gotten 5 awards of excellence from the Government Finance Officers Association and 3 upgrades from Standard & Poor's and Moody's. We do our jobs in our cities. And we serve, I believe, as an example to Washington as to how to get things done and get it done well. We're open to partnerships. We're open to creativity. It's what we do every day. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing any shutdown stories from the mayors. Are CDBG dollars drying up? What are you getting on HUD dollars coming through? Any shutdown stories?
I think I'm talking too much, Paul.
You're going to have reimbursements.
Okay. Yeah, Paul, you want to say something, Paul? It's a smiling Paul talking, right?
So a number of us have taken inventory of all of our agencies as to what's going on. There's one bundle of areas where we've got delays that are hurting our municipalities, but it's not the end of the world. And that's our federal grant applications from law enforcement to transportation. The big serious areas are, you mentioned SNAP earlier. We're also concerned about WIC, and a number of our cities are already figuring out mechanisms that we can step in and cover WIC payments and support if those should cease. We're terribly concerned about public housing, and a number of the cities which do have the capacity will be stepping in to replace federal government payments for public housing opportunities. One of the areas that we can't affect, which is of great concern, is FHA loans. First-time home buyers. We've got a whole cascading series of problems. Folks have timed out their apartment leases as first-time home buyers. They don't have a place to live. They cannot close. The sellers are also left in limbo, and this is becoming a crisis in a number of our cities, which is not going to contribute to the stability of housing, which is a major issue in this country. In regards to the grants, I do want to say that on our commitment to increase public transit, if these grant delays continue much longer, we will see ramifications in 2020 and 2021. But our biggest concern right now is in the areas of health and housing, and that's where we will be forced to step in, and we're looking to our state governments to assist. Most of us flew in here. I think every one of us had the same experience. We went through security, and we thanked the TSA workers, and we made a big point of acknowledging them And as the mayor said earlier, we're also looking to see what kind of support we can find in terms of bridge loans and payments to our federal workers. In Madison, Wisconsin, we've got the Forest Products Research Lab. It's not the highest priority in the world, but several years ago, they did the work that discovered what was happening with all those dangerous splintering baseball bats and increased safety for Major League Baseball. But we are very concerned about these federal workers in all of our agencies across the country.
We're seeing incredible challenges all across the country. Just human stories. The reality is we talk about 800,000 federal workers. We're talking about millions of families affected by this. In our city, we're trying to take as creative approaches. Laud Mayor Bowser for the approach that she articulated earlier. Everyone's going to have to get pretty creative in trying to meet the needs of our citizens. We control our water system in Columbia. We're developing a program allowing for deferred payments on water bills for those who are affected by the shutdown. But the impact is very real. Research that we've worked on with Aspen, the Epic Institute, and Pew also shows that the majority of families in America suffer from significant income volatility. Recognize that the average family cannot absorb an unexpected $400 bill. So imagine compounding that with missing 2 paychecks, and it can be devastating. See the mayor of Atlanta inching towards the microphone. Atlanta's airport, the busiest airport in the world. You have to understand, for those of us who live in the southeastern United States, in order to get to heaven if you die, you must pass through the Atlanta airport. And if, in fact, this shutdown continues to have the effect on our TSA workers, I can only imagine how devastating. Please, Mayor Bottoms.
So if you all could just watch Mayor Cantrell on over my shoulder here as I talk about the Super Bowl.
Gotta start stuff.
But I just want to say our immediate concern, obviously we're concerned for all of our federal workers, but we do have a Super Bowl coming to Atlanta in just a few weeks. Right now, our security lines, we are getting support from the TSA. They've flown in additional agents into Atlanta, but we are extremely concerned because on what's called Mass Exodus Monday, we will have 120,000 people go through Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International. And if you think of a day that you have 70 to 80,000, that's a lot of people. So what we're doing in Atlanta, we're opening our TSA lines early at 3 a.m. We are the Monday after the Super Bowl, but we are also looking at a loan program. And thanks to the mayors who are being so innovative in giving us ideas on how we can step in and provide loans to our TSA agents to make sure that our airport continues to function. Because if you can't get through Hartsfield-Jackson, as Mayor Benjamin has said, then you probably won't get anywhere in this country.
Any final words? Any defense of the Saints? Yes, sir.
You might want to mention that we have 8 presidential contenders coming to this meeting that are right for President of the United States.
This is the place to be. If you actually want to be around people, Democrats, Republicans, and Independents who just get things done and get some great ideas, some great policy ideas on how to move this country forward, you ought to be here. You ought to be here. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.